If you're just joining us today, welcome. We are glad to have you. This is a very special Sunday in our tradition here at Southside Church of Christ that we call Overflow Sunday. Overflow Sunday is just another term that we have to say that this is a dedicated day of the year that we focus on our mission efforts that we have across the world. Of course, we're talking about specifically today our mission effort that is a preaching school and medical clinic in Honduras, and Andy is going to come and talk to you more about that in just a few minutes. Of course, overflow is the word that we have for our foreign mission efforts. That is to say that what we do here together as a church family on Sunday mornings in Rogers, Arkansas is not all of who we are or what we're about. In fact, what we do here overflows to the rest of the world. And so we're talking about that specifically this morning. Although we just sang the song, I love to tell the story, statistics show that we really don't. In fact, I was attending a workshop a couple of weeks ago on healthier perspectives regarding evangelism. Because, of course, the fact of the matter is we all believe that we should share the gospel. We really do believe in the good news, but when it actually comes to taking that next step and telling somebody about why we believe what we believe, that's a tougher leap for so many of us. In fact, this gentleman who was speaking, Dr. Tim Alsop, was speaking at Harding School of Theology. I was attending via Zoom. His presentation began by establishing a baseline that Christians don't like to do evangelism. We believe that we should, but let's just face it, we're afraid to do it. In the U.S., in fact, he shared some of these statistics from 2007 to 2020, a 13-year period, professing Christians in the U.S., so that's a big scope of people here, professing Christians in the U.S. decreased from 77% of the population to 64% of the population. That's a significant drop in 13 years. We believe that there's a lot of people that we need to reach and ought to reach. So then, how do we go about doing it? Well, we feel frustrated. Often, many people say they feel ill-equipped. There's anxiety on top of frustration. In fact, in 2017, the Barna Group found that evangelism is the activity that Christians are least excited about. Out of all the things that we do as Christians, people were presented a survey with a list of all the different things that we do, which included things like singing and communion. It included, of course, service project, Bible classes, fellowship meals, etc. Evangelism was on the list, but out of the surveyed participants, we put it at the bottom of the list. But the good news this morning is there's hope. The good news this morning is that there is good news concerning our goal of spreading the gospel to the world. And what we want to do here for Overflow Sunday, on the one hand, is to give you some folks to root for. Hopefully you can learn some faces and some names, some people to believe in, people to pray for, people to invest in as we partner together in the gospel. Secondly, this morning, we hope that what we are accomplishing is a reminder that God's mission is bigger than our own backyard. And thirdly, to establish a couple of very specific ways that you can partner in God's mission in our efforts in Central America and Mexico. But first, let's go to God's Word. Philippians chapter 1. This is one of my favorite texts regarding what it means to do God's work together with people that perhaps you've never even met face to face. Philippians 1. Paul begins his epistle here, Philippians chapter 1. I'll read verses 3 through 5. I thank my God in all my remembrance of you, always in every prayer of mine for you all, making my prayer with joy because of your partnership in the gospel from the first day until now. Paul writes this church that has supported him. We learn a little bit more later in the letter about the nature of that partnership. And he writes this church to say, I'm praying for you. I'm thankful for you. And we are in this together. Of course, Paul is writing this from prison, so perhaps it's good for the Philippians that they're at home in church and not actually physically with him in prison for preaching the gospel. And yet this is the word that he uses here in Philippians chapter 1. This word that the ESV translates as partnership. Perhaps you have a different translation there in the pew. What Paul uses here is the word koinonia. It's the Greek word that, well, throughout the New Testament, this is an extremely significant word that can mean a wide range of things, and unfortunately, English just doesn't do it justice. It can mean, as we just read there in Philippians chapter 1, partnership. A broader meaning would just be simply to participate in something with someone. It's often, most commonly translated as fellowship. But I'm afraid that fellowship is just a watered down word for us as U.S. Americans in the 21st century. The word fellowship to us means eating fried chicken together. This word means more than that. Though I like to eat fried chicken with the best of them, don't get me wrong. Instead, this word conveys a sense of oneness, joint participation, a sense that we're all in this together, a close association, or even, we're not talking about the ritual communion, but this sense of community, this sense of communion that we have. This is the word that Paul opens his epistle to write to his supporters in the gospel to say, this is who we are in Christ together. We are a fellowship of oneness, of unity. We're doing God's mission together. Yes, as I began a few minutes ago, it's very public knowledge that there's been a decline of professing Christians in the U.S. of late. But what if I told you that globally, there's good news? Christianity is not just growing, but booming in places like South America, Africa, India, China, Russia, and, as we're going to talk about this morning, Central America as well. Brothers and sisters, there is something to hope in concerning what God is doing in the world today. It just takes a little bit more awareness of looking outside our windows to see what he's doing. Before I turn it over to Andy, I want to share with you a handful of ways that we can partner in the gospel. Well, this term that he uses there in Philippians chapter 1, he explains in more detail later in the letter. Later on in Philippians, we see a few different examples of ways that we can partner in the gospel. One here is we see that we partnered together in prayer. They have physically, financially supported Paul so that he might go and evangelize. And yet he opens his letter twice in chapter 1. He says, don't forget, I'm praying for you. Now you might think if Paul is in prison, shouldn't he be the one who's being prayed for? And yet what we see here is that this relationship goes both ways. It's not just they send their dollars and Paul does the work. But he's saying that this is a relationship in which case we're both lifting each other up to God. Secondly, we see in Philippians in chapter 2 that partnering in the gospel includes encouraging one another. In verses 19 through 30, Paul talks about how he's sending Timothy to encourage the church. And he wants them to do likewise for him, sending Timothy and Epaphroditus. He wants the church then to lift them up, receive them graciously. He's talking about let's help each other out, lift each other up. We also see how important it is from time to time to labor side by side. This is a term that Paul uses in Philippians 4:3. We work together. Sometimes some of us actually get the chance to go and work alongside our brothers and sisters in Honduras or in Mexico. Some of you have the sweat. Of course, we heard the story from Billy and Sandy last week and Andy about actually getting there and doing back-breaking labor. I believe they said that's what that you were good at, right, Billy? You did the back-breaking labor. Well, sometimes we actually go and physically show we're here to physically help. And yet there's one more way Paul shows us in Philippians that we can partner in the gospel. And that's what we're talking about primarily this morning, and that's our financial support. Philippians 4:10, and then verses 14 through 19, we see this example. I rejoice greatly in the Lord that now at length you have revived your concern for me. Concern being a loaded word here. You were indeed concerned for me, but you had no opportunity. Then in verse 14, yet it was kind of you to share in my trouble. And you Philippians yourselves know that in the beginning of the gospel, when I left Macedonia, no church entered into partnership with me in giving and receiving except you only. Even in Thessalonica, you sent me help for my needs once and again. Not that I seek the gift, but I seek the fruit that increases to your credit. I have received full payment and more. I am well supplied, having received from Epaphroditus the gifts you sent, a fragrant offering, a sacrifice acceptable and pleasing to God. And my God will supply every need of yours according to his riches in glory in Christ Jesus. What a beautiful partnership we have the chance to observe in the book of Philippians. We're going to get a chance to observe our partnership this morning with some folks in Honduras. But first, I'll tell you that recently our kids started soccer. Lucy is 5 years old. She's playing soccer. And let's just say that she's having a lot of fun. We'll put it that way. She's having a lot of fun. In fact, so much fun that last week, one of her teammates scored a goal. One of her best friends on the team, Talon, who's been shy in practice, has sometimes been afraid to even step foot onto the field. Talon scored a goal. You would have thought that they had just won the 5-year-old Super Bowl when Lucy watched her friend score a goal. You see, for her teammate's victory was her victory. Her teammate's goal was her goal. Lucy leapt up into the air. She went on a straight-up Tiger Woods celebration. As she went around and high-fived every single team member on her team and the other team when her teammate scored a goal. Brothers and sisters, that's the picture that Paul is painting here, isn't it? That's the picture that we're celebrating together this morning as a church family, that God is doing something good, and we get to be a part of it. Of course, supporting our mission efforts stateside, according to Philippians, isn't second-string evangelism. It's not second-rate evangelism, but it's essential. It's partnership in the gospel. It's not a lesser form of evangelism, but we're hand in hand with our brothers and sisters in Christ. The mission of God and the unity of his Spirit unites us. Brothers and sisters, we've got work to do. So now Andy's going to come and talk to you about logistic examples, specific examples in how we have been and are currently partners in the gospel with a rich, thriving initiative of faithful, gifted saints in Central America. Take it away, Andy.
Through our Overflow efforts. If you've not been here for the past 2 weeks, the 2 weeks leading up to today have been focused on two of our other areas of what we call our Overflow ministry. If you've never been here, if you landed here from space today is our Overflow Sunday. And we give everything that we give to foreign missions is either given today or pledged today. And so today is a very special Sunday for us, and we have been building up to this Sunday for the past 3 weeks throughout this month. 2 weeks ago, we told you a little bit more about the specific, what we would call congregational support that we give to churches in both Mexico City and a few churches in the country of Honduras. And that is probably our most traditional model of mission outreach, where there are individuals or families that we support in locations who are growing churches. And those are with the idea that they will become self-sustaining, self-supporting, financially independent congregations that we can launch, and they can be their own thing. There's the second Sunday, this past Sunday, we talked about our medical efforts, which are specifically with our clinic work that happens at the preaching school in Progreso, as well as the medical campaigns that we from Southside go to Honduras and spend a week in clinic efforts helping folks to feel better. Medical care is not great, and sometimes it takes a while, and even after you get your prescription, they will send you to the pharmacy, and if you don't have cash flow, then that can become a difficult proposition where you're choosing between two different things that are very important to your family. So there's the congregational work, and then there's the medical teams. And this week, I'm going to tell you about our preaching school. So all of these things kind of overlap and intertwine. Many of the people that we support in congregational missions got their training from the Biblical Institute of Central America. Whenever we go on our medical campaigns to Honduras, we usually use the preaching school as our base of operation to then launch out. And we launch out to churches that we have relationship with, many of which have been through the preaching school, or at the very least have connections to the preaching school. So whenever we separate these three things out, it's not as though they are separate entities. They are very intertwined, and they have all complemented one another throughout the years. But today I want to focus in on the Biblical Institute of Central America. I'm going to call it BICA for most of the time that we talk about it. BICA is a preaching school in Progreso, and its mission is to teach preachers and leaders in the city of El Progreso, Honduras. It's in the heart of Central America, and the mission is to spread the good news of Jesus Christ to all of Central America. And I'm going to tell you a lot about how that happens over the next few minutes. The next slide, where is it at? So just to give you a little context, if I could have done a zoomed-in Google, we're going to click through. So go to the slide of Central America. This should get you your bearing if you're unfamiliar. I was telling Jared the other day that we have ministers in Honduras, as well as Nicaragua, as well as Guatemala, as well as El Salvador. And he's like, if you asked me to put those on a map, then that would be difficult for me. And so I said, well, let's put them on a map and let's zoom in. So here's the big zoom. We all got our bearing, right? You can kind of see us up there at the top. So we'll zoom in on the next slide. So we're zooming in. This is more the central part of Central America. Still got a little bit of Mexico there. Zoom in again. Okay, and all of those yellow dots are pins from my own Google Maps because I have to drive to those when we're in country. But zoom in one more time so you can see Tegucigalpa there on the last slide on the south. San Pedro Sula is the city that we fly into. It's kind of the large metropolitan area that we fly into whenever we travel down to Honduras. And then if you'll zoom in one more time, San Pedro Sula up there to the northwest, and El Progreso is the city where the school is. And you can see that yellow pin down there at the bottom of the slide. Can you back up one slide, Elijah? So San Pedro Sula and that highway that goes directly south of there and the highway that is over by Progreso, this is a very growth-centered area. There's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of property. There's a lot of churches that are springing up, and there's a large number of people. So San Pedro Sula has around 800,000 people in it. And then Progreso has just shy of 200,000 people in it. So we've got easily 1 million people just in those two cities that we are working with, okay? So go on down to the next slide, and I'll show you a picture. Keep on going a couple forward. And this is our school. So this is what it looks like now, but this is not what it has always looked like. And if you follow along with our BICA information through the bulletins and the newsletters, then you may know some of this. And I appreciate your feedback as far as, is this too much information? What do we need to do differently? Do we need more personalities in future issues of Overflow Sunday? But I appreciate your feedback as we go along. So this is what the school looks like now. Whenever I first got involved with the mission trips down to BICA, the facility was nowhere near as nice as this, and it was in a different location that we rented, and it was a wooden frame structure, and it was eaten up with termites, and it was just the opportunity for expansion was very limited there. And so Jim Canfield and some of our other leaders in both the BICA board and some other volunteers around our community started looking for a new property, and they found a new property. It's 5 acres, and it's in that corridor that I told you about where there's lots of growth happening. And they said, this needs to be where we plant. So we bought the property. Go ahead to the next one. And go ahead and click one more. So this is still what it looks like now. That building that you saw in the last slide was essentially just an open warehouse. It was floor-to-ceiling space, similar to the space that we have here today. And they purchased the property. It was a banana plantation and other fruit. They had some equipment, and it was just an agricultural property that they purchased. So they went in and they put in a second floor. It's concrete, and they got block walls and everything. Click on, here's a couple more construction pictures. Actually, the young lady who's there in the black shirt in the front, we didn't notice that until I found this picture. She is now our assistant in the clinic that operates out of the school as it looks today. Go ahead, a couple more construction pictures. And so you can see this is what it went from, just a very simple warehouse building to something like this. Go ahead. This is the tour. So we're going to pause that video if we can. All right. So this is coming in through the front gate, and I'm just going to kind of narrate over top of this facility tour real quick. Go ahead. So this is coming through the front. Over there to the right by the stairs is where the clinic enters. This is what the project looked like whenever we were building. There's really loud Spanish music. These are the classrooms where the classes happen. This is the upstairs, the men's dormitory area. So that's where all of the students will stay. This is the baños, if I have to translate that. Office areas. This is the children's wing. And so we have both daycare as well as while we're there doing campaigns, they're there. This is the kitchen area, which was a big, big upgrade. And this is this is the female student housing. They're on the right side of this building, and this is their dormitories, and they'll give us a brief glimpse. This is kind of an open common area. And then the bathrooms. And then the ladies' dormitories. And these are housing for married couples. And so all of those long videos, all right, you can go ahead and pause that and click to the next slide. This is Victorino Martinez, which I'm super sad that he is not here to do what I am doing. Go ahead and click to the next slide. So this is we have 4 dormitories. The first one there on the far end is the one that you saw that brief tour of. And then the subsequent ones are housing for married students. So a couple can come, stay together in these married housing, and go throughout the coursework together as students. Go ahead and click to the next slide. So this is what happens at Beacon. So those are the facilities. Those are the things that are there. Those are the things that we have raised money for, and Jim and his team has been awesome in having the forethought to raise the money to make those facilities happen. We have capacity for close to 50 students, if not a little bit more, in that facility. So we've got the space, and now it's just a matter of getting the students and being able to support them while we're there. But I want to talk a little bit about the classroom and what that's like and what the content is like. So I've asked Paul Woodhouse to come. Paul Woodhouse has taught 2 classes down at Beka, and he is going to tell us a little bit about what students are like and what there's a mic there on the stand. If you'll power it up, that would be louder. Grab a seat. So Paul, tell us what you taught 2 classes at the school, correct?
Yes.
Do you remember what they were about?
Last year, I taught a class on the end times, new heavens and new earth. And then this year, I taught a class on how to do ministry.
Okay. And so that gives us an example. Some of the classes are topical in nature. Some of the classes are, a specific text that they'll work throughout the course of the study. And the faculty are, Paul is an exception because he's an American who went there, but the rest of the faculty are ministers who have either been through Beka and have come back, or who are longtime preachers in Central America who come and teach coursework. These are some of the students that you got to teach while you were there. I stole these off of your Facebook.
Oh, okay. I recognize them.
You recognize some of this crew?
Yes, I do.
So go ahead and click to one of the slides of Paul, and Alan Cruz is translating for Paul in this situation. Tell me a little bit about your impression of the student body.
These students, they basically give their lives to this for 2 years. They quit their jobs, they leave their families, they go and they live on campus, and then they receive an intensive instruction for 2 years. So my class was one of many classes that they get. And this was a special class because we'd never taught this class at Bika before. This was a class on how to be a minister, how to be a servant, how to help people. How do you be present with people when they've lost loved ones? How things as mundane, well, as uninteresting to us but how to baptize someone, how to do a funeral, how to officiate a funeral, how to comfort someone who is in crisis. And of course, you can't cover everything. We did 3.5 days basically, and it's intense. It's all day long for 3 days, and these students were totally dialed in. I mean, I've never taught a class quite like it.
And so students come to the school and they will do 2 years. There's a first year program and a second year program. And I'll tell you a little bit more about, just go ahead. What's the next slide? This is how the curriculum works. And this is just a 2-month sample of what the curriculum might look like. And this obviously goes throughout a full year. But the students will do, like for there on that first line, and there in white, you've got personal evangelism for 2 weeks, and that would be taught by Marvin Espinoza and Fernando Bonilla, and then they would roll into a campaign. And that is the cycle every month throughout their entire time there. How would you describe, Paul, Jared mentioned that many times for us it's difficult to do personal evangelism. Is that an issue for these students?
It is not an issue for them. They were already sharing their faith before they ever come. This just equips them to do more and actually teaches them how to meet people. The Honduran culture, the Central American culture, is quite different from American culture. People are more receptive. I'll just simplify it. They're more receptive to hearing the good news of Jesus than most of our peers are in America. They want to hear. They're always interested in hearing new things, and so these students are taught how to touch base with these people, how to speak to them, how to teach the Bible. Most of the work that they do is topical, scriptural. They're learning the Bible. They're learning they're learning theology and that sort of thing. Where I fill in the hole is how to be a minister, how to be a servant, how to be present with people. And it's interesting because I'd say 98% of the instruction is about Bible topics and theology. Whereas, and I'll say this, one thing, Bika is not different from most schools of theology or seminaries in the United States where we teach theology and biblical studies. Mm-hmm. We don't teach much about how to do ministry, how to be with people, and how to serve people. So
I was in a lot of Bible classes as a Bible major at Harding. But as you talked about how to be a minister, one of the things that latched into my mind was whenever you go to visit somebody in the hospital, don't sit on the side of their bed because you don't know what wires and sensors and hoses might be there. And I thought, man, of all the practical, and so this practical knowledge that the classes get, and so to say this coursework, this curriculum has a broad variety, and it's something that we want these students to graduate from as well-rounded ministers and evangelists.
Go back a couple of slides to the picture of the kid. Go back another one. I say kids. They're young enough to be my grandkids on some of them. Go back one more. There. On the left, this was something we spent quite a bit of time doing. This is a listening exercise. And we broke up the group into triads. And in each triad, they would get about 10 to 15 minutes. And each student would take turns being a sharer, someone who would share something, and then a listener, and then a referee, an observer, okay? And I would teach them how to listen. And it was the job of the sharer to share something from their life. It didn't have to be anything sensitive or anything, unless they wanted to share something. Then the listener's responsibility was to listen without asking any questions. They were not allowed to ask questions. They were only allowed to reflect back what that person was saying to them, to acknowledge that they were learning and listening to the other person. Then the referee, the observer, would stop the listener if they broke the rules, okay? So that, and then would evaluate the exchange between the two of them. We spent a half a day doing this, and there was a lot of laughing because it's awkward to do that. But I didn't have to understand Spanish to see what was going on. Alan, an interpreter, Victorino's grandson, or son-in-law, he would go to each triad and he would listen for a while and assist them. I would teach Alan how to do this, and then Alan would go and assist them in learning how to listen. It's amazing how few of us really know how to listen to other people, but that was the first step to listening. Generally speaking, in schools of theology, we're taught how to talk, how to share what we know, but we don't listen. We don't know and learn how to listen to people. So we spent some time doing that, and that was a lot of fun, and I think a real eye-opening experience for them.
And so Paul has told me many times about how impressed he is with the students and the program. One other interesting thing, that picture on the left, that gentleman in the back, he is in his mid-40s, early 50s, and he is a student who has entered the program. He's, I believe, in his second year now, but that is one unique thing about the Beacon program, is that it is not exclusive to, as our kind of age group moves from, high school into university. You can start at any point in your story at Beacon. So thank you, Paul. Anything else?
His name is Heriberto.
Heriberto, cool.
Herbert Heriberto. I can't pronounce it very well, but he just got engaged. He and I still have contact. I have contact with over half of these students on a continuing basis. So
sure, they are.
We don't just go and then come home and forget them. We have relationships.
For sure. Thank you. So, and one of the things that reminds me of is that if you have more questions, if you want to be connected with this ministry in the future, they have a very active Facebook page. And so if you just look up Bika in Facebook and follow along, I share a lot of their activities on Facebook. So go ahead and click a few more slides, and we'll tell you a little bit about what's next for Bika. So click to the next one. So this is Marvin Espinosa, and Marvin is our director in Honduras. And Marvin is he is a really, really remarkable servant of God and leader of this school. There was a season in the relationships between our school and some of the congregations in Honduras that was a little bit rocky because of some personalities and things like that. And Marvin has come in as a healer of those relationships. So much so that he was invited recently to speak, and this is him speaking on a panel, and then he did some other teaching at Baxter Institute, which is probably the most prestigious. It is more of a collegiate atmosphere in Tegucigalpa. It was a high honor for him, and showed us that he is making inroads and making he is being seen in the community at large as a resource, as someone worth listening to, as someone who is important to the church in Honduras and Central America. Go to the next slide. So this is an event that is happening. I believe it just happened this weekend, and this is a bonfire event, and it's a big youth rally of what Marvin advertises 350 plus teenagers that are coming to our campus in Progreso. And those are cities there that are listed in the middle. And this is a map. So all over Central America, into El Salvador, into Nicaragua, that students are coming to our campus to have events. And this happens not just with youth rallies, but also with preachers' meetings, also with kind of meetings of the minds. And again, on their Facebook, if you want to follow along, Marvin is bringing people together and connecting the churches all over Central America to our campus in Progreso. And so that is a remarkable opportunity, and it talks a lot about what we want to do going forward. Go ahead and click to the next slide. So this is the property that we showed you the picture of. If you you can see Jim and Marvin and our what is his name? Aris, yes. He is a minister from Russellville who went on the trip with us, and we are going down to walk around this footing. You can click to the next one. This is a footing of an existing building. Our plan is, go ahead and click to the next slide. Our plan is, so you can see that is the red arrow is pointing to the big pretty building that we've showed you pictures of already. Click to the next one. This new project would happen on that site that you saw Jim walking towards in that last photo. Click on. So what we want to do is we want to create an open air meeting space for these events, these large events to come. There's already graduation. We've shown you the bonfire. There are lots of opportunities. And what we hope would happen with this type of a facility is that we would have an opportunity for Beka to operate much like our Christian universities. This afternoon at Harding University is the Harding Lectureship. And if there were things where we could do at Beka that would operate and facilitate all these connections like that, that's what we hope this facility would do. Right now we're getting estimates and we're getting designs, and so we've got some numbers. And if you would like to support this above and beyond or separate from your overflow, please talk to myself or to Jim. And so this is a little bit of a dream for us to reach out and have the central location of the preaching school be used to its fullest, and the relationships that Marvin is building be used to their fullest. And so this is a project that we've got in the works for the future of Beka. All right, go ahead and click to the next one. So, Overflow. We as a Southside family support Beka. Beka is one of our largest line items in our activity. There are other churches all over the country that also support Beka. So a couple ways specific to Beka that you can be helpful. If you have connections at other churches within driving distance, and whenever I say driving distance, to Jim Canfield, that's like Atlanta. And you know, we were in Little Rock a couple weeks ago, and it's just like Jim is ready to go. He's got this nice new truck, and he's ready to put the miles on it. But if you have connections with churches that we could bring on board as support of Beka, please tell Jim or myself. This week I'm going to the lectureship, and we've got a booth down there specifically in promotion of Beka. So as far as the entity, and then we are one of the primary supporting churches and oversight of the Beka School in Progresso at Southside. So that is one element of what we do through our overflow activities. Guys, the guys that I asked, could you come and grab these 4 stacks of cards? These guys are going to bring the cards. So Overflow Sunday is kind of 2 lanes. If you give any amount today, that is the lump sum. So just raise your hand, everybody that wants a pledge card, or please, everybody take a pledge card so we feel good about these boys walking around. Just take one, even if you just need something to have a bookmark. But we want you to use this pledge card to make plans. So the offering that we're going to take up here in a few minutes is specifically to this Sunday, and it is a singular lump sum. And so if you are pledging, we want you to pledge money that you will give in the future. And we tried to kind of enunciate that in this card. So whatever money that you give today, that's going to be the start. And then if you are pledging, those are the monies that you would plan to give going forward throughout the rest of the year between now and next August, the end of next August. Okay? So just for our bookkeeping help, either give it today, but if you give it today, don't put that on the pledge card. Does that make sense? So those are kind of 2 categories. We want you to give today. That gives us our start. But the pledges let us know what else is going to come in between now and next year. I appreciate Jared's encouragement of us as evangelists in this effort, because this is exactly what this is. The school and the ministers that have branched out from that school and work in churches all over Central America over the last 20 years are outstanding, and they are doing an ongoing work that is really remarkable, and Southside has a huge part in that. You guys support our medical efforts. You guys support the ministries that we support in Mexico City and in Honduras, and that all comes from this Sunday and the pledges that we give over the next over this year. And so we are really, really excited about what we're going to do. You can see our goal is a little higher than it was last year. We like to dream big and think of new projects. We came through and reached our goal last year, and we want to expand upon that. And so the goal financially this year for our overflow budgets is just short of $124,000. And we want that to go because we've got some ideas, we've got some projects. We've got a dental project that we would like to expand our clinic work at the preaching school to include a few days a week of a dental operation there at the school. There is an upfront cost to that we would love to secure so that we can get that ministry going, because the limitations on dental care are similar to the limitations on medical care. And so as we close this time, so the way this is going to go, I'm going to give an invitation, because the opportunity to obey this gospel is always open. And Lee is going to lead us in a song for that invitation. And then after that, we'll do the overflow giving. Okay? So if there is anything that you need, if there's something that is broken or hurting in your story, if the call to serve is one that you want to answer, if there's something that you need personally, you need help with, you need forgiveness for, if you want to be a part of the story of Jesus personally by becoming a Christian today, I wish that you would come and do that as we stand and as Lee leads us.